All right, good morning, good evening, good night. Another Layer 1 podcast here. We are bringing you the latest from around the industry. I am your host, Nifty Q. I'm sitting here with Matt Lockyer, Developer Relations Director from Near Protocol. Near Protocol is building an open source platform that enables creators, communities, and markets to drive a more open, interconnected, and consumer empowered world, meaning they're building a Layer 1. They are on the Layer 1 podcast. Matt, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing great. I loved your intro. Morning, evening, night, worldwide,
We
just
are
wherever you are.
Mr. Worldwide. That's what they call me. Though they really don't. But we are. I listen. I have to start this off because I tweeted out. I got all the socials out this morning, and I'm gonna pull it up on the screen here. You retweeted or quote tweeted a tweet with hair pulling after we had the social media post. Is that a good hair pull or a bad hair pull when it comes to being on today's podcast?
I just tweet my mood. I think like, this morning, I'm coding. I got calls going on with creators talking to the Mintgate team
Ah,
about their Mintbase integration on Near and gating token like content. I mean, it's just yeah, like there's a lot of irons in the fire. There's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, everybody's building right now, like just building like mad.
absolutely, man. So I'm glad you made some time here to basically stop by and give us the knowledge on what's happening with Near Protocol. We're going to talk Ethereum. We're going to talk EVM, different competitors that you guys are dealing with. We're going to talk NFTs. Right before the episode, you said you can't wait to talk about that market there and what's going on behind the scenes. So, kind of want to start out here today. Just give me a quick background as to how you found yourself in crypto. I like digging in and finding little nuggets here. But how did you find yourself in crypto and then at Near Protocol?
The origin story, huh?
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, in a world. No, I'm just kidding. Um, so basically in 2017, some dude asked me to go for like a piece of pizza. It was like January 2nd. So
Mm.
I'm always down to hear about, new things, new opportunities. So I go for a piece of pizza with this guy, and he says, "Hey, we're building a venture studio, and we're going to cover these like emerging technology topics." And I go, "Well, what kind of topics?" And they said, VR, AR, MR. I have a background in graphics programming, so that was like, okay, that piqued my interest, and that's why he wanted to talk to me. And then he said, AI, ML, whatever, and I have zero background in that. I kind of get the basic idea about deep learning, but
Yeah.
I'm not super interested in stochastic models and neural nets. Little too nerdy for me. And then he said blockchain, and I was like, blockchain, what's that? And this is like it's like January 2nd, 2017. So like a pretty good
Mm.
time to jump in. And so obviously I'd heard of Bitcoin. I think when I was in the computer science department at the University of British Columbia, doing my homework, some kid like kind of shuffled through in 2010 and said, "Hey, are you guys going to mine Bitcoin on your laptops?" And, and I was like, "You can do that. What is it?" Um, I crunched the cost. I had a big gaming rig at home with like a GPU. I crunched the cost though, and I was like, man, this is going to cost so much in power. And it was like literally,
Mm.
I was talking like cents, like how many cents it would cost me to get like 100
10,000
Bitcoin or
Bitcoin.
something. It was like so stupid. Like I was like, oh, this many kilowatt hours or something. I was like super dumb. So didn't do that. Because obviously I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be in the Bahamas or something. um, but yeah, anyway, 2017, this guy wants to start this venture studio with a bunch of other dudes that I kind of knew from the startup scene in Vancouver, British Columbia. That's where I'm based. And yeah, the venture studio, it never really materialized. It kind of pivoted into what would now I guess be called like an STO platform or something like that. And just to give the audience a little background on myself, like I don't have a financial background. I'm not really super into DeFi. I mean, I get it, but I'm not super crazy about
Mhm.
just like charts and lending and yield and all this other stuff. um I'm more like a consumer application kind of person. I'm more product. So basically when they pivoted into this DeFi thing, I kind of took off. I joined like a company in town that was that was basically helping many different projects at the time. And yes, they were basically helping them to do ICOs. So this was 2017. This was like through the summer and into 2018. I left early 2018 to just be independent. I remember going to ETHCC. So I went to ETH Waterloo, the first hackathon in October 2017. I met everybody. I actually sat next to Joe Lubin in the opening ceremonies. I met Vitalik, met his whole family, met everybody in the scene, met all the people from Maker. And at the time, like there were literally like 4 people that worked on Maker. So this was kind of cool. Met Kevin Owaki, like waiting from Gitcoin, waiting for food, and just complaining about the lineup. So just like weird ways to meet people that are now like essentially kind of like the moguls of the space. Right?
What a different time, man. Like Shapeshift, I guess, is like making a move and kind of closing down or something. I saw that news come across my feed. I'm just like, man, all these like really big projects from back in the day. It's crazy to see because it feels like we were so young back then.
Yeah, it's pretty funky. So and then the CryptoKitties team was like it was just it wasn't even Dapper. Dapper didn't exist. It was just 4 kind of kids at a table with tie-dyed shirts and like a bunch of balloons or something, and everybody was like, who are those guys? They're weird. and then 2 months later they launched CryptoKitties in November. So anyway, long story short, it was pretty cool. But I went independent in 2018. I was at ECC and everybody's like, what are you doing? What are you working on? And I was like, nothing, absolutely nothing. And it feels great. and then, like obviously things kind of went through like a bit of a 2-year bear. So, like consulting and sort of working for people. I was doing enterprise consulting. I was teaching, quote unquote, innovation labs around, Canada's kind of biggest companies, how to, stand up Ethereum networks, how to write smart contracts, how to think about blockchain. That all kind of dries up when the price crashes and nobody's talking about blockchain anymore. But then I kind of got back into blockchain and I landed at Near because Dustin Goodwin, who now does talent for Chainlink, was basically doing talent acquisition at Near at the time. And he's a friend of mine from the ETH Denver scene. And I've been sort of one of the kind of helpers and organizers of ETH Denver for the past couple of years. And anyway, he comes bouncing up to me and he says, hey, you should, this is now 2020, ETH Denver 2020. So the last in-person event that I went to. And he comes bouncing up to me and he goes, hey, you should join Near. You should talk to Ilya. He's around. And Ilya, one of the co-founders, was there. So I get into a pretty good chat. I decided to start the interview process. Ended up really liking the people that I met. And then, I'm entered this whole world of like really, really talented engineers, really, really smart builders, and just making like what I would say the right decisions to build a layer 1 that is kind of like designed for mainstream adoption, designed for products, designed for apps, right? A lot of the people from Near come from a background in basically building Web 2 style databases. They come from MemSQL, which is like a massive, I think they renamed themselves as some other company now, but basically I know them as MemSQL, which is like a massive distributed kind of database company, kind of like a competitor to Redis. So really smart people and really focused on building applications, really focused on like open web stuff. So that appeals to me, as I kind of mentioned before, like not really a DeFi guy. So
you are an air quotes guy.
I've been doing this a lot. Yeah.
I watched an episode here with Anatoly and Alex. They were like debating in 2019 or 2020, and then, like the first 15 minutes, I'm just blown away. Like those guys are so smart, and I'm sure you have a lot of smart team members that you're working with. You mentioned CryptoKitties there back in 2017. That's when I first started hearing scaling solution, right? We need to figure out how we can scale ETH. It's been saturated, but at the same time, there's so many awesome projects, Near Protocol being one of them. So how do you stand out from the crowd here? So maybe give a quick introduction on what Near Protocol actually is for the uninitiated, and then how do you stand out from all of the competitors that you'll likely have just launching a layer one?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the top of the show, you mentioned, Near Protocol is a layer one. We are on the layer one podcast for anyone just joining. So as a layer one, obviously we have our own kind of security consensus. We have our own validators. We've kind of stood up everything on our own. Now we just went fully unlocked mainnet, et cetera, public permissionless, blah, 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 in October of 2020. So you can tell like the ecosystem is kind of like still a little early, just getting going. Like we're still growing. We still have sort of like the road to like a few more kind of major updates. I don't think we have any cool names like Voltaire or Rembrandt, like some other projects, wink, wink. But we just ship. We just ship shit. I don't even think we have names for these things. So so how Near is different is actually pretty interesting. So I mentioned before, it's kind of like designed for apps. It's designed for developers to use it like as if it was like a cloud-based database and API. So when developers work with Near, they're really working with it as if it was just sort of an async await kind of environment. Like, hey, I'm calling an API, I want to get some stuff, and I just sit there, wait for a response. And I realize that's kind of how that's how Ethereum works. That's how other things work. But once you start going into the internals and you start making like things, for example, like cross contract calls, you realize that it's not synchronous like Ethereum, it's actually async. So if like one smart contract calls another smart contract, calls another smart contract, you can actually do these promises across all the contracts. And it feels, from a developer's perspective, it feels a lot like how you would design like microservice architecture, or how you would have your server talk to the Twitter API and then come back and then go back to your user and say, okay, you're logged in now. So in that sense, it's really like very like kind of wisely designed, in my opinion. In terms of like the raw technology and scaling and stuff, it's all built in Rust. It's all like just super fast, lightning quick. The validator requirements are really low as far as blockchains go, so you don't need some super beast machine running in the cloud like some other networks, wink wink. It's like I'm sort of like doing like trash talk illusions here.
Yeah, I see it.
Anyway,
won't mention a name for now.
Yeah, you don't need a crazy machine or anything like that. And the I'd say it's like svelte, right? Like it's pretty lean, it's pretty mean tech. Then when it comes to like consensus and how do we scale, like how do we scale storage, how do we scale like the actual blockchain itself, this is the most interesting part. So basically every kind of scaling solution that is a sharded blockchain takes that's like out on the market, or even kind of has a white paper, basically has like a beacon chain approach to sharding like their blockchain. So you have this beacon chain, and then you have little validator sets, and then what you do is you have shard chains, right? So you'll have like this shard chain, that shard chain, the next one, and so on and so forth. And then what you do is, just to make sure that a group of validators on one shard can't double spend or do anything like weird and malicious, every 6 hours, 12 hours, you name it, whatever the configuration is of the chain, you like rotate the validator sets, right? So, and you'd even rotate the validator sets, into the beacon chain and out of the beacon chain and things like that. So you push around the validators, and you do that with some random function. They call them VRFs, right? Verifiable random functions. So anyway, this is how kind of like a lot of sharding and scaling is done. So Near does use VRFs. Near does rotate validators. However, what's really interesting about Near, and again, this is sort of from the standpoint of a developer, is that Near is still only actually producing one blockchain. So we're only producing one chain of blocks. So we're not producing separate shard chains and then like tying it all together, or having contract A be on like, you know, shard X, and then that has to call contract B on shard Y. You know, we're not doing any weird, crazy stuff like that. We have this concept of basically like shard chunks, and then those chunks get all included in one. So I'll use like a sciencey word, but like one contiguous blockchain. That's like just one blockchain. So the simple way to explain this to a developer, or to just a sort of a casual kind of crypto kind of what would you call
enthusiast?
them? Like crypto enthusiast. Yeah, I like that. Is basically near for developers looks and feels, and you know, whatever you want to call it, it quacks like ETH 1.0, but it has the scaling potential of ETH 2.0. So I think that's the fundamental kind of architectural difference, is that it looks like a single blockchain. It acts like a single blockchain. It is pretty much a single blockchain, but it scales like a sharded blockchain. So that's where I think the fundamental difference is. And if you dig deeper into like the white paper around Nightshade and how Near is architected, you'll start to kind of see that there is an architecture difference there that is unique only to Near, which is quite interesting. And I mean, we got the brains to do it, so just go to near.org/team.
Yeah, we have the chat kind of rolling here as we're live. People can tune in after the episode, and we also post audio as well. Crypto Stamina saying, high level chat today, head spinning already. My head is definitely spinning from just that conversation. Generally, the way that I understand it is people and developers and really people that are just building these chains, they sacrifice efficiency for security, and then vice versa. Is there any type of security aspect that, you know, having a single contiguous chain, as you said it, is there any kind of trade-off with security there and not being able to have all these different things happening on the sharded chains? I know we're like in deep water, but just kind of throw me
okay. I'll try to fish us out. But no, great question about security. I would just tell, like, just so we don't linger here too long, I would just tell the readers to jump into Nightshade paper and stuff. It's all online, and to look specifically for the term shard chunks. So what we do is we still validate shards, but we do it in this chunking kind of way where we can include like bits and pieces of shards in that contiguous blockchain. But we know it's already been sort of verified and validated. So it's kind of like lifting up the headers of a block and just putting it into that single blockchain. So if people are kind of familiar with the sort of validate a bunch of data, create a header, a header hash, make sure, it's included in the one single blockchain. So it is similar, but if you go really deep into Nightshade and all the other stuff that we've invented, like Nightshade, Doomslug, it's all sci-fi inspired naming, by the way. We get some real hardcore nerds on the team.
Yeah, I love all the layer 1 protocols and the things that they ship. They name them after whatever they are into. Like, I think one that we interviewed a while ago was like doing Dota names, which I'm like a big Dota player. So I was super into that one, but yeah, appreciate that.
We got some Dota players on the Near team too.
Oh, really? I switched over to League, so can't really talk about that. I do have Grooge Strike here. He's saying hello from the Near Degen Syndicate. I want to talk about community building here in a second, but before we kind of jump to that, I again, going back to that episode with Alex, your co-founder, and Anatoly from Solana, the one big difference, at least in the first 10 minutes, was the validator sets, and how Alex believed probably that having more validators is in more decentralized validators rather than having like 20 big time like big entities. I'm getting lost in the weeds a little bit, but is there a vision from Alex top down that's like, we really need a decentralized validator set rather than having these kind of big entities be the ones that secure the network?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just answer that, but with like sort of just funny kind of stories that I picked up. So I joined just over a year ago, so I'm probably at like a year and 4 months or something at this point. But I got all these really funny stories from early employees of Near. I mean, first of all, Near started as an AI company. We still have the domain near.ai. So what were they doing with AI and why did they want to do a blockchain? Well, if you think about training data models in a distributed way, like everyone shares their data and everyone trains models together, you need a way to pay people for bringing their data or bringing their models, and then bringing their compute. And that's where Ilya kind of meets Alex Skidinov from MemSQL, and Ilya comes from an AI background, and they sort of smash their brains together and they say, hey, this is where we can actually create this open data marketplace. But it changed from then, because just standing up a blockchain like a layer one is it's a mission in and of itself. And then I'd say the Near team focused on scaling, so much so that there were early plans to actually run Near on mobile phones, right? Like actually get it on a mobile phone. And, they were sort of hell-bent on basically creating a blockchain that was just the most efficient blockchain. And then, scaling starts to get into more practical concerns about, storage and sharding and things like that. And trade-offs have to be made. So the kind of idea of, a mobile phone, still mobile phone light client would be awesome. And I think there's still a roadmap to that. But the idea of like all validators are just running on some phone or something somewhere is pretty weird. It's still a little bit far off, I think, for crypto and blockchain in terms of a full validator. And then actually, like you mentioned, that scaling is a really competitive landscape, and there's a lot of projects out there that are scalable. At least now with their networks with like 4 dApps on them. But the team shifted around, I think it was around 2019, to really identify user experience and developer experience and mainstream adoption as the killer thing that we need to focus on. So there's sort of a big overhaul to everything, like starting in 2019 and then through 2020, with a real clear focus on developer experience first. Nail that developer experience, make it super easy. We've gotten lots of response from the developer community saying it's so easy to build. You guys got great tutorials. I built a photo gallery with IPFS in a weekend. That was something that a new hire said to me. And then we move into basically user experience and mass adoption, which I think we're in right now. Like we're really heads down working on tons of the user experience challenges with partners in projects in our ecosystem, but also on our own. We're kind of decentralizing our organization. There's core groups inside the Near Foundation and Near Inc. that are we're spinning out, and we're turning into entities that are basically going hard after user adoption, mass adoption. So it's pretty interesting conversation. We can pick it up talking about spinouts like later on. But we probably should talk about community stuff.
Yeah, we should. We'll get to that. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our own community members, Purpletariat. He's saying it's cool you're having Near on. I've been working with a streaming protocol on Near to set up influencer artists to make custom playlists for their platform. So that's a cool little crossover there. Our community member is building.
What's that name again? Purpletariat?
Purpletariat. Yeah, that's
like proletariat colored purple or something.
I think so. I think we made the connection there. So essentially that's where we are in the timeline. We've talked about the infrastructure. We've talked about what the team has built. Now let's get devs. Let's get community members. So take me through that process of kind of going outbound to devs, maybe receiving inbound requests from developers to build, and then the arduous task of building community. Like, just take me through that.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle to get a bunch of people, incentivized to build on, some new thing. It's new, it's scary, it doesn't do this, or hey, it doesn't have the same ecosystem or the same sort of developer community or developer support. So I know when I go look for some, I want to put up a Node.js server or something, right? I go look for like, what's the framework to use to do that? Is it Express? Is it Koa? Is it Happy? Right? These are just these sort of web server frameworks for Node. I look at the GitHub stars, I look at the community, I look at how many questions are answered on Stack Overflow. And I mean, it's tough when you start out as a new project, but I think that we've successfully broken through that hurdle, which is like that first jump into community, is like kind of like making enough noise so that people know that you're legit and you're going to be around for a while, because they know that that momentum will continue to be there. Like they know that the answers on Stack Overflow will only grow, the stars will only go up, you know, and the amount of other projects in the ecosystem that are successful will only increase. So I think we're over that initial hump, and now we're just kind of like we're thinking about like getting into that elbow of the curve, right? Like we're sort of kind of approaching that. But yeah, it's tough with community. So then there's like a whole other aspect of community, like who knows about Near, who can talk intelligently about Near, right? At this point, everybody knows, you know, all of the buzzwords from Ethereum. They know Ethereum, they know smart contracts, they know EIPs, they know how to find the EIPs, they know how to discuss them on Twitter, right? And these are like non-technical community folks that can discuss like and break down the impact of an improvement proposal. So I'd say that we're starting to slowly evolve our community in that sense. And again, we've been focusing really on mass adoption. So we have probably like, you know, thousands of community members, but they're still kind of like very end user. And we need to elevate the discourse. We need to like educate a little bit more. We need to get them maybe discussing those near improvement proposals and things like that. And it's a challenge. I want to give a couple of shout outs though to ground people in like concrete communities and people that are doing this stuff. So obviously you can go to our forum and you can hit the community tab. So it's like gov.near.org. I hope it's still gov.near.org. I'm going to be really loud and type that in. It is gov.near.org. You can tell how much time I spend on that. I'm doing some other things right now, but it's still important to Near. But basically gov.near.org, you can go to the forum, you hit the community tab, and you can see how much like activities going on there. One thing that's happening in a couple of days, a big shout out to the, they're called Ants Guild, but it's spelt with like a 4. So it's 4 NTS Guild on Twitter. So the number 4 NTS Guild on Twitter. So it's Ants Guild. And Ozymandias and his team from Ants Guild is doing incredible stuff. They can speak very well about Near and tell you everything that's going on with the guilds program. There's a big launch coming up of a second wave of guilds, which is really exciting. And what are guilds? Like the Near Foundation basically allocates resources to community groups and basically says, here's X amount of tokens, shove it in a DAO, and then like those guilds are sort of mandated with educating the community and getting like the messaging out and doing stuff like that. So I'd say that actually the guild format is probably one of the first sort of steps into decentralizing Near as an organization that we took, was really focusing on decentralizing the community. The next wave is obviously to decentralize a lot of the core people that started at Near. It's to decentralize the organization itself and get them out kind of competing in the marketplace and building, once again, we're focused on mainstream adoption, like building that mainstream product and getting it out there. So that's like kind of the second thing that's happening. So yeah, I mean, community building, it's number one. We got to get people educated. We have to actually also not just educate, we don't just want to educate Ethereum peeps, although we love them, and bring them over like Ethereum developers and Ethereum kind of crypto enthusiasts. We want to bring in new people, new voices, artists, creators. We want to really tap into those communities and really kind of grow the overlap between, the creator economy out there, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, and the overlap with crypto and kind of like ownership models that are a little bit more fair and transparent.
Yeah, I don't want to make this too simplistic of an example between Near and what we're doing at the Lad City Network, but there's a lot of similarities in growing communities in that first kind of before inflection point timeline where you're just trying to get to 100 subscribers, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and then retention and all these different things. And a little bit of an alpha drop for our community, but people in the know already know we're moving to a guild format as well. We've seen that in the creator economy with DAOs. I saw a little bit of your writing actually on your timeline where you're kind of looking at the creator economy. So where did this idea of guilds kind of come from? And then you can definitely give some shout outs to maybe some guilds that you're already seeing out there. But where was the genesis of guilds for Near Protocol?
It was a very angry and hot topic on our internal Slack right after I joined. So it's
Wow.
what do we call it? Do we call them communities? Do we call them guilds? What is a guild? What does a guild mean? Blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of voices, a lot of things volleying back and forth. To be honest, I can't tell you who was the first person to say, let's double down on guilds as a terminology or as a structure. But I can tell you the folks that were involved or sort of the most vocal in that discussion were Alexander Hudzilian, who's a big advocate for Near and has already kind of decentralized himself along with another really smart gentleman, Vlad Krishina, to build the Human Guild. And basically they've already kind of left Near proper to promote basically growth for Near dApps. So, get them on mainnet, get them users, right? And then the other voices in the guild discussion was Nima, who you probably, I don't know, a lot of people know who Nima is. If you see him on Twitter, you probably know who he is. So that's at Inside Nima. He was very vocal, and he helped kind of stand up a lot of our kind of early framework around community. And there's another guy by the name of Shreyas. I hope I can't remember his Twitter handle at this point, but basically those three voices were very vocal in sort of what do we call this thing? How do we do it? How do we structure it? And then we ended up on guilds. I really don't know how, but it sort of was like a hot mess of conversations and opinions, and then it just ended up on guild. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, and what is, I know we've kind of touched on that earlier when you initially talked about it, but I kind of want to circle back now that you've given me the origin story. What's the importance of these guilds within Near Protocol right now? Is it just kind of outbound exposure and trying to just get people to hear about Near, or are there other things going on with these guilds? Because you guys seem to be making a really conscious decision with promoting guilds and all of these improvements.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on within a guild besides just sort of translating and parroting, Near messaging right out there on TG or CT or whatever. But basically, the other things that are going on in guilds is building and focusing on connecting developers with creators, artists, people who want to get a small kind of dApp out there as an experiment, stand something up. So basically there's a lot of actual building going on in a guild. A guild back in the day would be they'd have maybe, someone out there who's sort of writing announcements, and somebody who's, working as a blacksmith or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely a sense of, forming around a topic or an idea, something that they want to get out in the world. And the tools that we use to actually do that practically, and why guilds are kind of important, is that we're dog fooding our own kind of DAO tooling, which is in the form of Sputnik DAO. So you can go to, or as the Russians call it, Sputnik. It's sputnik.fund. So if you go to sputnik.fund, you can find out about the Sputnik DAOs that are out there. You can look at stats. There's over 100 of them, and there's a V2 coming. Lots of really cool mechanisms you can use in those DAOs to basically control access, control the flow of capital, have a council, have layers of sort of authority inside your DAO, especially in the V2 version coming out. So We have guilds that are informal. We have guilds like kind of like Ants Guild is kind of like, it started out as the first guild a long time ago, kind of like an informal one, just take some tokens from the Near Foundation and sort of do good work, right? But I'm really glad that Ozymandias, Michael, has kept it up and really done right by the community and sort of led by example. And as you start to see those guilds kind of use DAOs, use other forms, like there's guilds out there who are doing NFT drops and NFT experiments and doing all sorts of fun stuff. There's guilds out there that are basically promoting and helping artists onboard to Mintbase and actually build the community there. So I think guilds in the near ecosystem sense are not just, they're not just talkers, they're walkers, right? Like they actually get out there and really, they grind, they build, they launch, they make all sorts of announcements about the work that they're doing on Twitter. So yeah, check out the Ants Guild. And then from there, and from the announcement kind of coming out on Friday about the new wave of guilds, they're going to do like a live stream, I think, and like announce a bunch of new guilds. You'll sort of quickly fall into the fact that there's a bunch of TG groups and a bunch of kind of Twitter accounts based around kind of topics of stuff you can build on there.
I love this move towards guilds. I mean, I know there's probably been some like informal ways that you can look at a lot of these projects and kind of Web3 communication between people and say, oh, guilds have already existed, but kind of getting that terminology down, being able to fund them through a DAO, and people just build what they want to build in the creator economy within crypto itself for like Near Protocol, for example. So awesome, man, just to be able to coordinate all of that within these processes, man. But I want to touch on a couple comments here. I think Crypto Stamina just said probably best term for a guild is a sub community, in my opinion. So I think that was kind of a good description. Also, Llama6666 says, what are some of the best use case examples being used? And I kind of want to move there. We're talking guilds, which are essentially kind of community workers. We want to talk dApps, right? You guys are a layer one protocol. Yeah. You need dApps to come in, like the Apple Store needs in apps. So we need to talk about dApps, of course. So what is being built currently on Near that you want to highlight, and maybe we can move from there?
Yeah, the Apple Store needs apps. They want to get that 30%, huh? Yeah, that's a great segue into dApps and building and how that all looks from a decentralization point of view as well. And if you don't mind, I'll just like take a step into some higher level kind of org stuff that's happening at Near. So what's going on is obviously we built our layer one. We built a rainbow bridge to Ethereum where you can send ERC20s. It's probably one of the, I call it the best bridge in the biz. I'll stay high level so I can get through all this content. Basically, I think it is the best bridge in the biz. And then we built an EVM. So what that looks like is basically, as a developer, you can just show up with tools like Truffle and Hardhat, change your configuration files, and deploy to essentially Ethereum running on Near. That Ethereum virtual machine is the EVM. And that project is called Aurora. Now, Aurora is basically going to be spinning out of Near Foundation, Near Org. So you could think of it as kind of like Near Foundation is kind of like the incubator, and Aurora is a project that is spinning out and becoming its own entity. So they'll be their own entity with their own governance token and their own, their own stuff. Now, it kind of looks like, oh, is Aurora becoming its own chain or doing this stuff? No, it's still going to live on Near, but it's basically just spinning out organizationally. And likewise, there's two other groups that logically kind of got together and decided, we like this topic. We want to spin out as well organizationally and basically do products, right? And this is sort of like doing product, doing other sort of protocols that are launched on Near and helping other entrepreneurs in the ecosystem launch on Near that simply can't be done like from a mothership like the Near Foundation. So one of the spinouts that's closely related to Aurora, because a lot of DeFi lives on Ethereum, right? is called Proximity Labs. And Aurora, by the way, is also really tightly integrated with the Rainbow Bridge. So the experience of basically having a DeFi protocol on Ethereum and then relaunching or launching like sort of a mirror version of that protocol on Near, and then bridging assets between them. I mean, you can imagine this takes all three things in concert. You know, you need a bridge, you need obviously Aurora and the EVM running on Near, and then you need Proximity Labs, which is basically a spin out that's going to help those projects get stood up, get liquidity, all that other good stuff that DeFi needs, right? So that other spin out is DeFi focused, and they're called Proximity Labs. And then there's a third spin out that's a little bit more in the creator economy space. And that's the one that I'm part of. And it's called Satori. So Satori is basically a creator economy studio. So we're helping creators launch crypto assets. We're helping creators put all that magical experience stuff on top of crypto assets and sort of firmly launch them into the fair and transparent metaverse. You know, so we're not building the next, you know, Fortnite with, you know, closed economies of dance moves and stuff like that.
You say fair and transparent like it's not fair.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm just addicted to the air quotes. If people are listening, I'm doing air quotes like nonstop, and I really do need to stop. But yeah, no, thanks for pointing that out, Q. Yeah, it's what I mean to say is like we want to take creators away from basically platforms that are siloed. We want to liberate them from essentially we want to liberate them from platforms that insert themselves in between like creators and fans. Like you know, if you actually well, I won't name any names, but like we had a like a big sort of, you know, artist label management company, whatever you want to call them, show us you know, like Spotify for artists. And it was like, whoa, have you guys seen it? You know, and like, look, we can see this, we can see that, right? And I kind of said to myself, yeah, but you don't know who those people are. You don't know who the fans are. You don't know which fan is, you know, buying the most merchandise. You don't know which fan is recommending the songs the most, you know, and bringing in their other friends. And, you know, you don't know who just became a new listener, right? So it's really troublesome when you think about these creators. You know, they're at the mercy of the YouTube, you know, algorithm, or the Spotify, you know, the Spotify recommendation engine, whatever they call it. And we want to actually help liberate those creators, but we also want fans to get a slice of the action, you know, and be able to kind of take an ownership stake in the creators that they love. So I love the creator economy stuff. I love the products and experiences that are already starting to come out of this space. And that's why we're spinning out to start Satori and really go hard and work with creators on experimenting here, because only by experimenting and iterating will we hit that mass adoption kind of product point, right?
Yeah, social tokens are an interesting concept. I think they definitely hit that mass adoption piece, right? People are going to be more comfortable with social tokens in 2 to 3 years, in primarily because of the work that you guys are doing, that, you know, us launching the LADS token, having our own community token there for our network. That's going to look so much easier because of those iterations. So definitely appreciate it. Maybe we should talk after the show about what you guys are doing at Satori. But another kind of mass adoption piece as it comes to crypto that's being played out in real time is NFTs. Right before the show went live, you were talking about NFTs and your thoughts on the generative art movement that's going on right now. So really kind of, I guess, I don't know whether to start with you guys or start with an overview. But let's just get the elephant out of the room. What do you think of the NFT market as it stands today? And then we'll move into what you guys are doing with NFTs on Near.
That's a great question. Yeah. So what's happening with the NFT market today? Just really quick though, 2 shout outs on social tokens, Collabland and Seed Club. Doing great work, really exploring the space, working with the creators, you know, and their communities, iterating, experimenting. Love it. I love everything those guys are doing. So yeah, the NFT market right now is obviously, you know, it sort of fell off from I guess let's name the era. It was in like the Beeple era.
Yes,
And
name
then
the
it just
people. I'm not a big
just
Beeple fan, so you go
yeah.
ahead and do your thing.
No, I'm just joking around. I mean, but um, I would argue that I think it's even like it's almost even a disservice to call it NFTs at this point. Like, I mean, it's sort of like there are so many different types of tokens being launched. There's different types of experiences being launched. NFTs really kind of mean non-fungible, so they mean kind of like a one-of-one kind of artistic kind of piece. But of course, you see NFTs belonging to like a larger collection or a larger set, or you're this particular avatar out of one of these, uh
10,000.
10,000. Yeah, I'm glad you said 10,000, because it's always like, dude, we're launching our 10,000, generative NFTs. We sourced these hand-drawn, like beautiful artworks from 76 different artists around the world, all this stuff. And it's just, I don't know. At this point, my eyes are glazing over, because, there's only so many kind of, there's only so much kind of attention and community and sort of like bandwidth out there for this stuff. Like it's limited, right?
Yeah, to be honest, the biggest thing that nobody's talking about is the fact that there's not enough community members in NFTs right now. There's not enough investors in NFTs to support 100 different projects here that are going to be sustainable, right? They're just going to be, yeah. I completely agree with you on that.
I mean, it's sort of the same thing actually that you saw with ICOs. Like there's only so much sort of crypto enthusiasts and liquidity in the system to basically sustain, launch after launch after launch after launch. And then, I think we're firmly in the phase right now in NFTs that we were in ICOs, where the liquidity is really just splashing around now. Like people are dumping one NFT to get another, and it's crazy. But I don't want to be like a big downer. I think we want to talk about like kind of where does it go from here. So obviously we had the hype, we had a bit of a sort of a bubble pop kind of scenario. I think where it goes from here is like kind of like we need to look forward to NFTs 2.0. We need to look forward to NFTs that have utility beyond collectability. And what I mean by that is that NFTs are actually used for something like you mentioned social tokens before. And I think the one kind of interesting aspect of social tokens is I have X amount of social tokens. That means I get to do stuff in this community. I get to have, special moderator privileges on Reddit and Discord. I get to be in this private chat. I get to line up first for this merchandise. I get to I'm the only one that gets to buy this VIP hoodie, right? So I think where social tokens are going is really just the fungible version of where NFTs must go in order to survive, right? We need NFTs to be used as access. We need NFTs to be used to limit and gate, access to content and things that people can do, not only in the metaverse, but also in the physical world. And then beyond that, I think what we really need to drill into is, and there have already been cases like this. Like if you look at CryptoKitties and how you could breed the CryptoKitties to produce another crypto asset, that's an interesting on-chain gamification use case. But I think we're going to see more on-chain and off-chain hybrid gamification use cases of NFTs. So I think the gamification layers and the blurring of basically, between NFTs and crypto assets and just sort of traditional kind of social gaming or Zen gaming or casual gaming, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
I think the lines are going to get even more blurry there. And I'm really hoping that NFT developers out there can stop copying each other's smart contracts and start innovating to get us over into that world, that metaverse where we're actually playing with NFTs and experiencing them and using them and upgrading them, and they're doing all sorts of wonderful things.
The problem.
Go ahead.
No. The problem with the innovation is that it takes a while, right? Like people just want to like copy and fork code because they can do it in a month. You know, they could set up everything in a month and sell out for 2 million, especially if they're launching at the right time.
And you can make quite a bit of money. Yeah.
Exactly,
So
for a lot of low effort. So this actually is interesting because Crypto Stamina just said cough, Axie cough. You mentioned gamification, and NFT gaming is like the ultimate gamification. You're literally taking NFT assets and able to game with them.
but good point on cough, Axie cough. Okay, Axie, and who else, right?
Yeah.
Like who else is really out there like crushing it, right? And I would argue that the fact that we as a community, like the crypto community, don't have several examples to point to is kind of like doing us a disservice. And so, you know, everyone that's out there that's sort of doing kind of short-termism, you know, copy pasta, you know, NFT launches, we need to actually move the conversation forward. Like we need to look at projects like Axie, and we need to actually come up with iterations and innovations on NFT gaming, and we need to really push the ball forward there, because otherwise we're sort of you know, we're gonna face some issues.
Yeah, there is a different outlier there with Axie as well, in that they're tapping into a market outside of that little pool of NFT investors. I think that it's obvious what happens when you're able to access 100,000 people trying to get your assets. Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation that we could have for an hour, but I really want to touch on NFTs on Near. What are you guys doing to kind of capture NFT developers, but also what have you done up to this point as far as projects that are live now that people can interact with?
Yeah, well, that's really close to home for me because, as I mentioned, you know, like we're spinning out into Satori, which is like a creator economy product studio. But I started this year on the developer relations team doing, you know, kind of traditional developer relations stuff. So building standards, talking to developers from the community, working with projects in the community. I worked really closely with Mintbase on the royalty standard on Near, and just in general the NFT standard and how to do marketplaces and things like that. So we literally just stood all this code up in the first quarter of 2021, and we standardized it all. So now everything is super easy. And basically, one of the big projects that I put out was it's github.com/near-apps/NFT-market. I realize there's a lot there, but basically, if you look up like, you know, near NFT-market, you might get there if the SEO is good enough. The zero SEO that I did, but basically what that is it's a complete clonable, launchable repo where you can launch NFTs from one contract. You can sell them in a marketplace in another contract, and that marketplace is not special, it's standard. It could be any other marketplace. So the NFTs you launch in the first contract could actually be sold on Mintbase because they're standard. So there's an NFT contract, a marketplace contract, and there's also a fungible token contract, really just to show you that you can buy and sell NFTs on Near with fungible tokens. So if you have DAI or USDC coming from Ethereum, your users can use the Rainbow Bridge, and with one transaction from the Ethereum side, they can land inside a Near app in their Near account and place a bid. So it's great to have these like really advanced example repos. We have a lot of like top of the funnel developer content as well. Like we've got docs.near.org where there's tons of learning content. We've got I think it's learnnear.club or something. We've got the Near Certified Developer Program. I think you can Google that one. I think they did their SEO. So we have lots of top of the funnel stuff, but it was really, I think, this NFT market repo. I'm not trying to, you know, boast or kind of like, you know, promote my own stuff, but it really was this NFT market repo that had everything in one. And it launches a React app and everything. You can like click around and you can get it done in like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. You can launch this thing. I talked about it at Collision Conference back in April. I talked about it at Consensus in May. I did these talks where I walk through it. We have a YouTube playlist as well called Live App Review. So if you go to the Near YouTube channel and you look for Live App Review, you'll see my playlist is like, it's like 30 videos deep or more. And that's where I'm basically covering all of this stuff about just build apps, just get them up, get them started. Now, I don't really want everybody to like do like a garden variety, you know, NFT launcher or NFT marketplace. I want them to use this as a starting point to iterate, to innovate, because the table stakes are really the NFT standard, the marketplace standard. That's table stakes, right? You got to basically push it a little bit further, extend those standard NFTs, put some gamification in there, and make it fun and interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about partners. So the first NFT project on Near was actually Paras.id. Couple of dudes from Indonesia, and they started as an identity protocol, and then they pivoted to building NFTs. And they're very successful now. They have tons of artists, tons of NFTs being launched all the time. And then so they were kind of like the first out the gate. We're working with them on you know, standardizing the NFTs and migrating to NFTs that can be kind of sold across any marketplaces on Near, because they were so early that it's kind of like, if people remember, CryptoKitties was so early, they actually launched before the 721 standard was finished on Ethereum. So it kind of reminds me of those days. But a very successful platform, and hats off to the Paras team. Want to talk about Mintbase as well, who just launched on the Near mainnet. We worked with them on the Royalties standard, which is also very interesting. So royalties on Near are encoded into each individual NFT. So basically, when you launch an NFT queue, you know, you put it out there, you can say, hey, I collabed with Matt on this, so I'm going to give Matt 5%. I'm going to take 5% of all secondary transactions. And then when those NFTs are sold on marketplaces on Near, the royalties are basically paid out automatically. So somebody steps up and they say, I bought it for 100. I want to sell it for 150. Basically 10% of the gross, $15, let's call it, is going to be split two ways between you and me. And then the seller is going to get the remainder. So they'd make $135, right?
Yeah, creator royalties are like one of the best use cases for NFT, like literally genius. My problem with it right now on the Ethereum network, at least, is that it's split up between marketplaces. It's not encoded. Why do you think that doesn't exist like right out the gate with Ethereum NFTs? And I love that you guys have that baked into the NFT and not leaving it up to the marketplace.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say it's evolution of standards. And then it's sort of like when things come in as sort of like an afterthought, oh, hey, it'd be great, you know, but after there's already been like, you know, like 500 projects launched where they don't have that, it becomes really hard, right? So I mean, look at the internet, look at our technology right now. I mean, it could be moving a lot faster, but we sort of build on top of the standards that are already in place. We have to build on, I mean, just look at roads.
Yeah.
You know, some road is like bumpy and crappy, so you know they won't increase the speed limit even though cars are safer, right? Mm-hmm. So you know, people have these afterthoughts, and they want to build faster, they want to build better, but I think you have to understand like the gravity of what's been built before you, and you have to kind of work within those constraints. I do think there's other issues around splits. There's probably issues around splits that will come up in the Near ecosystem, but for now, all, you know, developers and creators need to know is that we standardized it. It's in our standards doc. I'll put it in the chat too, and maybe you can put it up on the show notes too.
Yep.
We have like a standards doc that not many people know about. It's called the Nomicon. So NOM, like nom nom, NOM icon.io. And that is basically like the Bible for what works on Near and how it works. So if you go down the left-hand side, you look at the standards, that's what we have sort of baked as a protocol.
Got it. All right, this has been about an hour conversation now. Fantastic, by the way. You're doing a great job here with this interview.
You want to keep going?
I'm here. I got my gloves up. I do want to talk about my MATIC bag and a couple other layer 2s and layer 1s that now have to deal with Optimism and Ethereum 2 potentially rolling out in 2022 and things like this. What do you think about, you know, being I don't want to call you guys an Ethereum competitor if you don't want to put that out there. I think that's kind of a little bit lazy in a lot of people's, minds. But what does it mean when you have Optimism kind of coming out with on synthetics now and on Uniswap now for potential competitors trying to take advantage of ETH's low scalability?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll just answer it like as quickly as possible. I would call it, we're all out there. We're all developing our protocols where we think we've taken the best trade-offs of, speed, scalability, security, you name it. We've, had trade-offs about developer experience and user experience. How do you get your users to switch networks, cross a bridge, move liquidity, right? Those are all like things that have their own trade-offs and issues under each one of those topics. Like respectively, there's like securities, scalability, speed, whatever. So I would call it, a lot of these projects out there, and ourselves included, we're looking for protocol market fit. So basically, is our protocol the one that made the right trade-offs and has the right features to basically fit the market or where the market wants to go? And the market here would be the market for developers building dApps, but also for users. So if you build like a dApp on, Polygon, or you build a dApp on Optimism, there's certain experiences that even as a developer, you just won't be able to code around. And your users will actually face them, right? And you just have to kind of ask yourself when you're getting involved with these projects and when you're building on these protocols, am I willing to educate my users on what those kind of, those protocol market fit trade-offs look like? Am I willing to educate my users? Am I willing to develop, maybe even like you got to get really close to the metal and develop with that protocol team to make that experience better. So I think all teams out there are doing a really great job. I don't really want to kind of like, speak for Near as if it's like a competitor in the space. I just say we're doing our twist on what we think protocol market fit looks like, with our bridge, with the Aurora project for developers that want to basically take Solidity code and launch it on Near as sort of like an L2 sidechain kind of solution. With our spinouts that are building product and stuff and leading the way as examples, and with our great strong kind of partners in the space, like Mintbase, Paras for NFTs, and other projects in the space on Near launching DeFi and other stuff. I'd say we're just trying to do our thing, and if our thing appeals to protocols and users, that's great. And if it doesn't, then we'll see. But yeah, I think it's really going to come down to market fit. It's going to come down to users basically being able to wrap their heads around this stuff. I think education is probably, so we talked about community, we talked about developers and experience. We in the beginning, we talked really nerdy about architecture and stuff, and we talked about applications, NFTs and DeFi and stuff. But I think the one thing nobody really talks about is how do we educate stuff? And you mentioned it really briefly, and we kind of touched on it, is getting, how do we get the other, 10 million, 100 million people involved in crypto? And I think that education is something that nobody's really talking about. We have an EDU team at Near. They're doing great stuff, educating developers. But I think it's even beyond that, right? It's about educating users. It's about just bringing more people into this ecosystem. So I'm hopeful that everyone is sort of, moderately successful before we have to start really talking about, competition and kind of slicing and dicing what should be a really rapidly expanding market right now.
Awesome. Great answer to that, by the way. And last thing I want to touch on is the Near token. People might be interested in getting involved in the Near ecosystem and things like this. So Near token, can you take me through some utility pieces there and what you guys are planning on for the future?
Yeah. And one other quick thing I'll mention too is I mentioned that the validators they run on really lightweight machines, things like that. The Near Foundation also is really was really interested in being climate neutral, so having like zero impact. And what happens is basically out of all of the validators and even the entire near team and how much we travel and how much office space we take up, like literally. Somebody asked me like, what's the square footage of the space you use? That's all sent up to South Pole Global, which is basically a blue chip carbon offset nonprofit organization for certifying companies as climate neutral. And we work with South Pole Global to basically offset the impact that we're having on the environment. So yeah, we have the seal, for, I don't know, 2020, 2021, whatever it is. And there's people at the Near Foundation that that was their task, and they work with South Pole Global on an ongoing basis to do that. So one thing that's just kind of cool about Near itself. I know like some creators out there are particularly sensitive to the topic. Some companies actually that I'm talking to, big companies, wink, wink, are particularly sensitive to the climate neutrality kind of conversation. But with the regards to the Near token and utility aspects of it, and like kind of how does it get used and things like that, there's a great post about that. It's on our blog. It's about, I think, I can't remember any of these links, but it's like, Near token distribution model, something. There's charts and graphs and, big kind of curves and things like that. But what I can basically tell you about it is that you use Near tokens to pay for transactions, just like you would in Ethereum. The only difference is that there's a few mechanisms in there, like basically, when tokens are burnt to pay for transactions, 30% of the burn tokens go to the smart contract itself. So when a developer launches a contract that is really, really popular, so for example, like let's say it's like a swap, or it's some money Lego in a DeFi kind of ecosystem, like a broader ecosystem, even if it's just a tiny little contract, if there's gas burned through that contract, 30% of it stays with the contract, which is actually really interesting for developers thinking about open source, thinking about models to, keep, we were thinking about models to keep open source alive, basically on Near, so that each kind of successful protocol that becomes a bigger, like kind of composable piece of a bigger ecosystem can actually still buy, sandwiches and ramen noodles and pay for rent. So that's one aspect that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So am I reading this right? 30% of the gas that's spent goes directly back to that protocol itself.
Yeah. So okay. if you burn gas inside a contract by like doing some sort of computation, or like maybe you're like swapping tokens or something like in a marketplace, 30% of the gas that's burned just stays in that contract.
Got it.
So that it just accrues Near, right, over time. It's not a ton of Near, but it's enough to kind of keep the lights on. Another cool thing about Near in terms of storage is we have the concept of persistent storage versus like archival, kind of like, okay, it happened on the chain, it's immutable, we'll keep track of it. But we do have kind of like persistent, or what I kind of, my short-term name, or my kind of like nickname for that is hot storage. When you want data in a contract, like for example, like you, Q, are the owner of an NFT. When I want to make sure that the owners and the balances and things like that are still in the contract, I have to actually stake Near in that contract. So basically, we have this concept of, they call it storage rent. That's a terrible name, but it's basically like storage staking. So you're staking Near to basically keep that storage kind of hot and persistent. What this allows us to do is to split the storage scaling issue into like two pieces. So we can look at storage scaling from an archival point of view and from a like a what is currently on chain point of view. And of course, if you're coming from the Ethereum world, all storage is just treated the same. So when you actually go and if you go and you want to kind of transfer ownership or remove even some data from a contract, you actually reclaim that Near, and the Near becomes transferable again. So it's a pretty cool model. I think it's actually kind of interesting, but it's something developers need to wrap their head around.
Absolutely. All right, guys, this was an awesome conversation with Matt Lockyer, Developer Relations Director at Near Protocol. Matt, the last question I have before you can drop your links or any other information, book recommendation question. It could be crypto, non-crypto. What book would you recommend to the people out there?
Oh, that's a great one. I try to read more like high level kind of stuff that doesn't have to do with crypto. I actually don't want to offend you, but I also try not to listen to too many crypto podcasts. But it's basically because I'm looking at it every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would recommend, like, the last great thing I was reading was I think it's the Naval Harari book about like 20 lessons for the 21st century or something like that. I forget the title. But I picked it up and I started kind of skimming through it. It just is something that is pretty high level. It's the same guy who wrote Sapiens, I think. So it's one of those, yeah, it's one of those books where you start reading it, but I can't keep reading it because I get so many ideas when I read it. Mm-hmm. you know what I mean? Like, you just start reading stuff. Other kind of cool books are, I really liked, I like The Sovereign Individual. I thought that was a really strong book, strong read for anyone in the space. Yeah. And, what else can I recommend? I mean,
guys, if you're out there, Sovereign Individual has been the most recommended book on this channel. So I need to read it. You guys need to read it. But did I leave you any extra time to have one more?
No, it's good. I mean, I would say also, like, here's a like a kind of like a podcast tip or something like that is, I try to listen to like domain specific podcasts, like, that are sort of like tangential, like, so it's close. So maybe I'll listen to like a digital marketing podcast, or I'll listen to like a normie tech podcast, and I try to pick up like, how are they thinking about, because they inevitably will talk about crypto and blockchain and stuff like that in some of their episodes. So I kind of hunt for the episodes where the show notes say, oh yeah, and we discuss, Bitcoin, and we discuss Ethereum, maybe it's like ransomware. But basically I try to listen in on those podcasts to just try to pick up the narrative and the way that people are talking about crypto and how they're kind of explaining crypto to each other, because you pick up a lot of useful kind of utility bits in how you can kind of turn around and expand the crypto ecosystem. I mean, I think I know enough to talk crypto with people that are already in, crypto Twitter and stuff like that, and get into arguments with the best of them. But I really want to start kind of educating and expanding our ecosystem. And I encourage everybody else to, like, pick a domain, pick something that you love, pick like something like sports or something like music, and really try to find the crossover bits there, and start to expand those crossover areas. It's really important. So you read a book about maybe a famous musician's biography and how they grew their fan base back in like the 80s or something. I mean, that's going to be fascinating. And if you're knee deep in crypto Twitter and you're reading that, you're going to get all these ideas, and you're going to be the one to come up with the next big, like kind of crowd and audience building crypto experience. Right. So I highly encourage everybody to just kind of read domain specific stuff, read stuff outside of crypto. It's really helpful.
Yeah. I love that idea of using source material that we don't see every day in crypto. Like, it is an echo chamber in and of itself, and the same ideas kind of get shared around between the same individuals. So it's cool to see, I love how you took a whole different timeline there too. It's saying 60s, 70s, 80s. They probably had some good thoughts back then too. So, all right, we had a great talk here on the Layer 1 podcast. We had a Layer 1 protocol here on the Layer 1 podcast. Want to give a quick shout out to Matt Lockyer. Yeah, love it. Near protocol. Guys, amazing conversation. Thank you for staying till the end. And I will see you guys next time. Our Vibe, our tribe.
Thanks a lot. It was great.